are live. Welcome back to the Beyond the Scope podcast presented by NDMD Productions and made possible by Augusta Podcast, now part of Get Up Productions, your one-stop shop for launching your podcast. Let Get Up do all the heavy lifting and give you the tools you need to turn your podcast dreams into a reality. Learn more at augustapodcast.com/NDMD. I'm your host, Andy, third-year medical student, and if you are familiar with the NDMD YouTube channel, you'll know that we love sharing stories from students, residents, and attendings of different medical professions while giving you an inside look into their lives, not just as healthcare workers, but as incredible people. This podcast continues the mission of sharing the incredible stories and experiences of students, physicians, and healthcare professionals, but this time it's all about the things those years of medical training doesn't prepare you for. Things that are beyond the scope of our practice. Whether it's navigating starting a family as a medical student or physician, or learning how to invest as a student, the goal is to bring on incredible role models who can guide you through those puzzling questions. So with that being said, let's introduce today's guest. And today we have a very special guest who just reached a couple of big milestones, not just in his medical training, but his personal life as a husband and new father as well. As a former college athlete at Duke University, he is no stranger to working hard, and that work ethic has translated well in his time as a medical student at the Mayo Clinic Alex School of Medicine in Rochester. His vlogs and pre-med advisement across YouTube has earned him over 22,000 subscribers and nearing 1 million views under the name of Evolving Medic. So I'd like to give a nice warm welcome to the Beyond the Scope podcast to JR. How are you, man?
Thanks so much, Andy. Dang, the intro is making me blush, dude. I appreciate it, and I'm super honored to be able to be a part of this, and I love what you're doing, and yeah, happy to have a conversation with you today.
Dude, I'm super, super excited. It's always a great time when I get to connect with other creators on the platform. It's just one of the many, many cool things that YouTube has brought into my life as well as yours. But you are status post step 1 about a couple days, right?
Yes, like 36 hours post step 1 or something crazy. So, yeah, I'll try to be as sharp as possible. I've been intentional of turning my brain off, but I'm turning it back on for you, Andy. So,
thank you. I'm honored. I'm not going to be asking you anything too crazy. Not going to be diving down into like page 352 of first aid.
No Krebs cycle questions.
No. But really, like, you should be proud you earned it. It's a milestone that even I haven't even accomplished. So how does it feel to be done and dusted with step 1?
Yeah, man. First, thank you, and I'm sure that you'll enjoy this milestone too when the time comes for you guys. It's kind of like a surreal thing, and our class, because I know we're coming in at the same time. I'm a second year, getting ready to be a third year. We have this kind of unique situation where step 1 doesn't carry, I guess, as much stress as it historically has, and so I came into medical school, kind of like hearing all about like the horrors of step 1, and that you build it up to be this crazy kind of experience, and it's a lot of material that you have to know. It's a lot of like sitting down and taking a test. It's a difficult thing, but it's kind of anticlimactic after building it up to be like, oh my goodness, this actually defines my career, to now for us it's like, yeah, it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's just like the first kind of thing. So it's been a little anticlimactic. I was like, just coming into medical school thinking like this is going to be the defining moment of my life. And now it's just like, yeah, hopefully I just pass, and then we'll keep moving to the next thing.
Yeah, I think that weight has kind of shifted over to step 2 for us. And I remember some of my friends who took it early. They're just like, I received a PDF in my email, and that's how I received my test results. It wasn't even an envelope or anything, so you'll get that soon.
Yep.
But so for those who are unfamiliar with you, JR, can you kind of introduce yourself, where you're from, where you went to undergrad, and your major, and then the classic loaded question for a medical student: what specialty you're thinking of?
Yes, love it. So I'm from Denver, Colorado. Born and raised there. I went to undergrad at Duke and was on the track team. I was a sprinter and a long jumper, and I majored in evolutionary anthropology, which is like a major like nobody knows about. It's like not the classic bio or biochem kind of thing. Basically, spent a lot of times like watching videos on like apes and stuff. It was like an evolution kind of course, but and now currently second year, getting ready to be third year. I don't know if I'm like technically a third year since I'm done with STEP, but at Mayo Clinic. And I'll be starting my clerkships in a month. So I guess maybe I'll wait until then to call myself a third year. And I am passionately interested in orthopedic surgery.
Oh man, dude, good for you. I remember in my MSK module, there is definitely like a 90-day period where I was also gung ho orthopedics. They do a good job of convincing you to go there.
They are very adamant about what they do and like strong-willed human beings at like this is the best thing in the world. So if you hang around with them too much, then you'll probably fall into that thing. Which is probably what happened to me, but
Dude, they pull you in, man, and there's something just so rewarding about seeing tangible change. Like no other field. Like, hey, your bone is broken. Now you can see it put completely back together.
yeah. And that's one of the things that I think is like I need personally for like me is I struggle. I'm an emotional guy. Like I know myself and I know I'm an emotional guy and I know when I go through some of these other clerkships where problems can't be fixed, it's going to be difficult for me personally. And so to be able to have a specialty where like I feel like I'm actually fixing a problem, I think that for me I need that. And I know some people's hearts work different and they're stronger and better at being able to kind of handle hard situations where you're just providing comfort more so than a solution. But that is definitely something that I really like about orthopedics.
Dude, for sure. And definitely gonna have some of those experiences through clerkship. I think it's just part of building up your identity as a physician, and also just like hard lessons you learn on how to love and care people, and that will make you a better doctor and man, no matter what specialty you choose. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your stories on your channel coming up soon.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really good transition, talking of kind of transformative moments, things that really evolve you as, not just a doctor, a man, a husband. I think one of the most exciting things that sets you apart from a lot of med student creators, and I think just like med students, period, is that you and your wife recently welcomed a new member to your family. So now that is something that obviously no textbook or lecture will ever prepare you for, and something that I'm sure is life-changing. So I'm going to put on the side of me that wants to do a pediatric subspecialty and, ask, how's your little one doing? Like, what's the name? How has he been over the past few weeks?
Yes. Yeah, man. It is a surreal experience. I have a son. His name is Kari, Khari. Kari Hatcher Smith. He is now a little over 2 months, like 2.5 months old. He's absolutely crushing it. My wife Madison and I are like the most proud parents, which I guess every parent probably says, but I think we own that, which and I'm doing all of the classic new father things. I can like ramble for days on my kid, and whenever I see somebody, I like to pull out my phone and like show them the latest picture that I took and stuff like that. So I think I'm fulfilling the father duties as what I know them to be. So far, so good. But it's been absolutely amazing. It's I think when I started medical school, I came into medical school married already, and so my mind was like, I'm a big family man to begin with, and I want kids eventually. When I started medical school, I was like, I don't know if that's like actually feasible as a medical student. And my wife is a family person too. And so we kind of came in not planning to have a kid in medical school. But as time went on, we kind of just realized I'm going to be probably more busy as a resident. I'm going to be super busy as an attending. And I think like we have this mindset in medical school, or just like in the medical field, that like end of the tunnel kind of thing. Like once I get to this stage, everything will be different. Like my life will completely open up, and the floodgates will open of opportunity and free time. But like at the end of the day, we realized the more that we learned about this actual career and stuff that probably wasn't going to be the case, especially going back to my career interest of like orthopedic surgery. So, we thought this time would be, better than any other. And it's worked out great. Step one, studying with like a newborn was an interesting experience for sure. But, shout out to my wife, Madison, for being absolutely a boss and doing like full parenthood while I was trying to study. But I've loved it.
Oh man, it's just a really, I don't know. Your explanation is really funny because when I was on OB and internal, I actually had kind of a similar conversation with the residents there. More so in IM because they're a bunch of guys that had like 1 or 2 year olds or like their wife was 20 weeks pregnant, and kind of picking their brains, going, when is the best time to have a kid? And then all of them, the overwhelming answer was, there's no good time ever. There's never going to be a perfect time. So I'm kind of curious. Of course, every situation is different. How did you and your wife, knowing the busy schedules that you were not only going to have now, but even more so in the future, how did you really come to that conclusion that hey, there's never going to be a perfect time. Let's go for it.
Yeah, it was kind of led by the fact that um, I started to realize what the resident lifestyle looked like in the specialty that I was interested in. And I think before I came into medical school, I was like, we'll get through medical school and then we'll be able to like grow our family, like residency. I'm no longer like really a student. I came in not knowing clearly, I guess, as, as much about the medical field as I probably should have. And then, I kind of locked in on what my specialty of interest would be. I started to, shadow. I started to see more about what the resident lifestyle was. And then I started to appreciate the fact that like I would have a lecture from 8 to noon and then, sometimes have like clinic responsibilities in the afternoon, but like really be hanging out with my wife at like 5 p.m. watching Netflix or like making a YouTube video or something like that. And I was like, I'm like, right now is I have way more free time now than I will probably for the next decade. And I also want like I would like a big family, and so the idea of like having a kid in medical school, maybe having another one in residency, and maybe a third or whatever, um, it seemed like it was a better opportunity to start that now. Especially my wife and I have been married for going on 4 years almost, and so it seemed like we were ready with where our marriage was. I knew I had the time now. I wanted a big family. And I knew that it was only going to get more and more busy. And clerkships, like third year, is more busy than my second year, and it's literally going to get more and more busy. So, yeah, the summer between first and second year, we were like, let's just go for it. And it also, I will say, I think the environment that I have here at Mayo is nice because it's like I'm not even the first person in my class to have a kid, and we have like small class sizes. Our class size is 54 students or something. So, and then I have another class. So I have two classmates with kids already, and then I had a kid, and then there's another student in my class who his wife is pregnant. And so I think like seeing other people already having children and it being okay also was one of those things where it was like, this is gonna be fine.
Yeah, that's probably a good omen. If everybody else is doing all right, then it's like, maybe my worries are a little bit over dramatized. But I know that you and your wife have been busy. So first off, I want to ask, how are y'all? My one of my go-to questions, like, what's it called? Postnatal. My mind is going blank. It's the afternoon when I'm recording this. For new parents, asking them like, how much sleep are you guys getting? Are y'all okay?
That is a great question. It's honestly a day to day kind of thing, and my wife is. I will say that women, especially women who are breastfeeding, like well, first shout out to all women. Like this is a crazy experience, and I feel like the men in the situation for the most part is like, you know, gets to chill like early on. But my wife is breastfeeding, and so my son Kari wakes up every 2 to 3 hours during the night, and I may wake up when they wake up or whatever, but like I just like turn over and go back to sleep. Whereas like my wife has to get up and then she has to like feed them, and the feeding takes like an hour, hour and a half, and then they go back to sleep for like 2 hours and they like repeat that. And so my sleep schedule is more so interrupted, whereas her sleep schedule is like actually like she's not sleeping. So I'll say that like I probably am still able to sleep 7 hours a night, whereas my wife is probably sleeping like 4 hours. But I will say during the day, you know, she will go and take her naps and stuff, and then I'll be able to like be up with my son like when he doesn't need to eat and that kind of thing. And so it kind of balances that way. But at night, I'm still kind of sleeping like a baby, which I selfishly must admit.
Oh man, yeah. I'm telling you, after you go through OB and why, I mean, I guess you low key went through an OB rotation yourself, practically. You don't get any more personal experience than that. But man, you gain so much respect for what these mothers go through, and you just do your best to support them in any way they need. It sounds like you're doing a good job of it.
I'm trying my best, definitely. My wife is definitely an all-star. And it was crazy because she was like balancing, okay, I need to make sure JR can pass step one and also like keep this baby alive. And so she was like, taking care of the baby and her husband. But now I will say I'm doing my due diligence to make sure she's actually going back to work here and next week, or tomorrow actually. She's going back to work for the first time. So it's gonna be my first time being like full-time dad mode, and so I'm repaying her this way to be able to be like, I got everything now. You go do your thing, and then hopefully I can keep this baby alive.
It's all about teamwork.
Yep.
I think that leads to my next question, kind of going along with teamwork, and then time management is also a word that comes to mind. How has your schedule and your daily priorities changed as you welcome Kari?
That's a really, really good question, and I will say that like my daily schedule is still fluctuating. Like I'm still trying to find out how to incorporate the new change into making more of like a for sure schedule that I can stick to, and it's hard because his schedule isn't consistent. But I will say that one thing that has held true throughout is there's this like book. It's called like Eat That Frog, and the premise of it is essentially like if you have a frog to eat it first thing in the morning, and if you have like two frogs to eat the bigger one first. And the idea is essentially like if you have something you don't want to do, like do it first, and if you have two things you don't want to do the worst thing earlier. And so that's like how I usually base my schedule. And so I'm a morning person by nature. So historically I've gone up and I've gotten my studying because that's my frog. Like I know we're medical students, but I don't think we like really enjoy, and I'm like a huge Anki proponent, but like I don't enjoy it. I do it because it works for me, but like,
Amen to that.
So like that's my frog. And I've been even more adamant to like really do that as soon as possible, because then and before Kari came along, if I had things on my mind to do and stuff like, and I wasn't present, it's one thing not being present and just kind of like, trying to watch Netflix, but also like kind of doing Anki on my phone with my wife. Like, yeah, I should try to be more present with my wife, and but she's more understanding than my child, right? And so now I'm even more adamant to like, I'm gonna get all of this work done early, and when it's done, it's done. Like I'm not even thinking about school or anything else. And then this evening, like it's just daddy time. We're gonna be hanging out, and I'm not thinking about anything else. So the schedule thing, it's been up in the air, especially with like having to try to study and still having some school responsibilities. But one thing that has stayed consistent is just like get the studying done as soon as physically possible for me, And then once that's there, then I can do the other kind of fun stuff in life.
That's a very smart strategy. That leads directly into the next question, which is perfect. How have your study methods changed to allow you to spend more time supporting the baby and your wife?
For sure. So my studies method is essentially like all based on Anki, which is the space repetition flashcard tool that a lot of medical students use. And I'll say that it used to be one of those things where I would, like be at my desk doing it like it was like it was way more structured than it is now. It used to be like at my desk on my at the same time every day, whereas now like I have Anki on my phone, and like I'll literally like wake up and roll over, get on my phone and like do it in bed just to like try to get through my flashcards. And it seems like it's more kind of like scattered and things like that. Just because I'm like, this needs to get done. Again, eating the frog as soon as possible. So my studies kind of strategies have been much more scattered, I will say. But that being said, I one thing that I'll say about when I became a father is like I have so much more motivation to study. So the scatteredness isn't because like I don't want to do it or I don't feel like I don't have the energy to do it. It's just more so like I have to do it for 35 minutes and then I need to go help Madison grab a pillow or grab something from the kitchen to help her with feeding or whatever. And then I have to jump back in and kind of do that thing. So it's scattered in that way. But like I've had this newfound like inspiration to really like do well. And just like thinking about my son, and when I get exhausted, like if I turn my phone screen on, then it's just like a picture of him, and I'm like, okay, tighten up, Jr. Go back to that kind of thing. Get back to work. So like my motivation levels have been higher, I would say, definitely throughout my studying and everything like that. Even though I have to like break it up in a way where I really can't always just sit down for 2 hours. But yeah, that's really the main change is it's more scattered, but when I'm studying, like I am going harder than I probably was before. And that, I mean, I also was taking steps. So there may be a few confounding variables in that. But the energy and the feeling that I felt when I was studying, was higher than I think it would have been without.
Hey, did you expect that to happen?
I didn't. I expected like for me not even to be able to like really study. I expected that when my son came in this world, like I was gonna be grasping for air, not able to have any time, like struggling in my courses. Like I had my endocrine final. So my son was born on a Monday, and my endocrine final was that Friday, and I like was like so I was in the hospital for Monday and Tuesday, and I was like, there's just like no way. And in hindsight, even like I'd look at that situation just be like, I'm gonna fail this final, like this is just not gonna happen. But like I think and especially a lot of medical students, and I'm definitely one of them, we lean towards the side of like being neurotic in nature. So like we think of experiences as being like bigger than they really are, or carrying more weight in certain areas than they really may in reality. So I was thinking I would have absolutely zero time to do anything. But it's just like a transition to where then you find the new ways to find that time. And like I said, I'm still doing that. It's nice to be able to have a teammate to be able to do this with. But like transitioning to medical school from undergrad was like a transition that I'm sure you can resonate with, like where like your schedule, things had to change, the way that you did things had to change. But once you like found your groove, like you were perfectly fine. And that's like how I feel now, like having a kid too. It's like sometimes I have to think about I have to have somebody being able to watch my kid because my wife is going to work, and I have like this thing where I have to be in the clinic. So there's like this like adjustment phase of like figuring out childcare and things like that. But once you find the groove, then it's the same as like adjusting to anything. And so that's what I realized too. And it gives me a little bit of foresight to whenever, oh my gosh, clerkships are starting and I know that they're going to be hard and I know that, I'm going to have to find that groove and I hope that I find that groove early. But I know that once I find the groove in every clerkship, things will be okay. And then I'll find another clerkship and have to refine that groove. But I think having a kid it was just another kind of experience like that.
Yeah, and I think it's really good, just showing that it works out. It works out eventually, and then it's never been proven wrong before. It's not gonna be proven wrong as we move forward. It's just another step, a different change, and you know that's how we grow.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then I really like how you said you got a teammate. Um, and it's medicine's a team sport. Parenthood's absolutely no different. So how important is having a proper support system around you during this time? And I would even extend that to family, friends, including the support of your own classmates.
Yeah, and that brings me to a great point because I haven't even mentioned the fact that my wife's parents live 45 minutes away from us. And that has been like amazing. Like they will go to Costco for us and bring us groceries. And then my classmates did an amazing thing where they actually made like for the first 2 weeks of postpartum, they made like a Excel sheet where they were filling in, their names and what dinner they would make us and what time they would bring it out and stuff. And we weren't even aware of it. And then people started showing up at our door with food. And so, we've gotten a ton of support from, classmates, friends, and family for sure, which has made things a lot easier because you're really just trying to keep the baby alive and you can sometimes forget to like try to keep yourself alive too. So like when, people bring you food and you realize you haven't eaten at all today and it's like 4 p.m., it's really sweet. So I will say that having that support system is critical. Like, and as a medical student in general too, our lives are so busy. We have so much going on. Sometimes it can be really hard to try to take care of ourselves when we're trying to do so many things for our schooling and our careers and things like that. Having a baby is, just adding another kind of thing to that pile. But I definitely wouldn't be able to do really anything without people like feeding me and just sending messages of encouragement and like, checking in, hey bro, how's Kari? Like, what's it like? That kind of thing. It adds fuel to the fire. It literally like gives me food. So it's like adding fuel to me. As you can see, like the food has been clutch, but, having that support system, having teammates, who are there to help you throughout any of these kind of challenging experiences in life are key.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how has like your faculty, your chairs, been supporting you? Do they know?
Yeah, so I had to make a few like adjustments schedule wise with my schedule just because it was either like Kari's 2 month checkup or like something and Madison, my wife, could definitely take him by herself, but I wanted to be there and I wanted to that kind of thing. So I have had to send some emails like, hey, I just had a kid. I want to go to the doctor's appointment. Can I reschedule my, peds, doctoring session for tomorrow or something like that? And every time it's always been, oh my gosh, yes, send me pictures of your kid. So that's made it like super nice. The faculty have been great. And, I think the school that I'm at too is like, people will have kids and again like they're used to students having kids and in Rochester, Minnesota, like there's nothing really else to do, so everybody here is just having kids and the faculty I guess are used to having to balance that. But yeah, no, everybody has been absolutely incredible. Faculty have been great. Everybody's working with my schedule, and I know I joke about it being like a thing with here, but I would expect that to be the case at most places. Medicine, I think, as a whole, is like changing to being more of like an inclusive environment. And I had when I was a first year, when I told somebody I wanted to go in orthopedics, this faculty member was not in orthopedics, an older faculty member, and said a joke that was like, like the only way to hide a $5 bill from an orthopedic surgeon is to give it to his kid. And I was like, okay, well, the idea of like first orthos like are money hungry, and then second like they don't see their children. Um, but it's like
That's
I
not
think
true.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that there is, a stigma behind medicine and being able to like have family, and are people actually going to be, helpful for you when you have family and things like that, because there's even, stories of women in residency not or having children, and then being like pushed out of residency programs, and a lot of like kind of historical just like poor practice in the field of medicine that I think is changing for the in the right direction. And so, yeah, things have been great. Things have been easier and better than I would have expected.
Yeah. I mean, what faculty member is going to say no to you going to your wife's like, you know, routine prenatal care? Like that just that wouldn't be great.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and that's just awesome. Of course, I expect nothing less from Mayo than a nice supportive environment. So it's good to hear. I know I've had a couple of my classmates also have kids during their first or second years, and that whole Excel sheet concept very familiar.
Nice.
It's a
Let's
nice gesture.
go.
It's the least we can do.
I love it. I absolutely love it. You guys are clutch. The support system literally is everything. So,
Once you enter in medicine, it's a giant fraternity sorority. Everybody knows what we're all going through, and if there's any way we can help, we try. At least that's the ideal way. I know there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, like nobody understands what you're going through, physically, mentally, emotionally, more than the people sitting in the lecture halls right
right.
alongside you. So, if one of us needs help, we try to get behind them. That sounds like that's exactly what your classmates did for you.
Absolutely.
And I think kind of talking to classmates and then moving forward in medical school, you mentioned that you're starting clinical rotations very, very soon. So, how do you plan? I know this is a work in progress, but how do you plan on balancing family time with your studies and clinical hours as you progress to that next stage in your training?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I am worried about. I'm fortunate. My wife is so she's a teacher. She's a elementary PE teacher, but she's actually going to be taking a leave, and she may be done. We'll see. But so she's going to finish off this year for about 6 weeks, the end of the school year, and then next year she's not going back to school. She'll be a full time mom, and so it essentially allows us to not do the daycare thing, and which when I am busy is more of like peace of mind for me, that like I won't get a phone call of like, hey, your baby is puking, you need to come and like pick your baby up
Mm.
or something, and like I'm in the middle of like my surgical rotation or something, and I have to like try to balance that because like my wife is held up or something. So that was a little bit of a de-stressor for me. But one thing that is still present in terms of like an active stressor is the idea of like just not being able to be around much, and being like that busy dad. And that's something that is just I can't get away with that. We've chose a career path that's busy, so that is what it is in terms of I can't get away from it. But finding those times are going to be definitely a work in progress, and I think I'm gonna have to be very adamant to know that I got lucky that my shelf grades aren't the end all be all for where I'm at, and so with that being said, if I need to take 1 hour less to study for a shelf so that I can spend that time with my kid just practicing, being active and making those sacrifices and understanding where my priorities lie, because I know when I get busy and when things get going, I'm on autopilot, and it's 10 p.m. and I haven't, I've been in my office, or I got home at 6 from working in the hospital. Then I've been in my office until 10, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 10, and I go upstairs and my wife and kid are asleep, and so I know that I can have a tendency to fall into a cycle of just being on autopilot and just go go go. So one thing I'm going to try my best to be intentional about is just taking hours and just saying, okay, it's okay for me to miss an hour of studying for this so that I can spend an hour and do a nighttime routine with my kid. Um, and the more that I think I work on that early, like just in these clerkships, then I think it would be that much easier for that to already be routine and habit when I'm in residency and beyond. But definitely something I'm worried about, and I'll definitely have some updates for you, once that transition comes.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a broken record where med students, and I think it stems from even the pre-med stage, where we all just feel so guilty taking that hour off, and almost to the point where we can't even enjoy our time off. And it's a practice to get that none of us are perfect at. Um, I think, in all fairness, you are a much stronger man than I. I don't know how I could have done it, and I'm speaking from experiences 2 rotations deep, where I'd get home and just exhausted, like completely floored, and I don't know, and obviously you'll figure it out, and that's just the difference in age between us and stages of life, but just mad respect, really,
Dude,
and I'm looking
thank you
forward to
so
seeing you
much.
handle it.
You're also an absolute boss, bro. You manage a podcast, one of the most successful med student YouTubers in the game.
Dude,
During your clerkships, which is much more busy than me, during pre-clinicals.
nothing compared to keeping a little one alive, and I mean I can say there's no greater joy. And this is the part of me that knows I want to do a pediatric subspecialty in whatever I want to do, and it's just like if I had a kid right now, I think I would kind of come to the same conclusion as you, where my motivations would be heightened. Where it's like I know this is a non-negotiable motivation that I want to spend time with my family, so I'm going to make the time. And I'm sure that feeling is very strong and very familiar to you, even before coming into your rotations.
Yeah, yeah, life is one of you're gonna have so many kind of experiences that play a role into the way that your mind is shaped and stuff. And I will say that having a kid is one of the biggest things that can kind of influence the way that your mind is shaped. And um, there's a few like of those like Hollywood just like statements that are like, oh, it's whatever, like where you have a kid and it's like love at first sight, whatever. But like it's for me, like having a kid, like that was like the first time it was like actual like love at first sight. Like for me, that was like a
Hmm.
Hollywood statement before, and now it was like when this baby came out, I was like, I actually like love this baby with like all of me and that kind of thing. And then now it's like you're always going to be thinking about your kid and making sure that your kid is like okay wherever they're at. And like if when I go to school and I go do something, like my mind is actually actively thinking like I wonder, like, I hope Kari is okay, and that's also why I was like, my wife being able to stay home is good, because then I have less
Hmm.
stress with that. But to the point of like, being motivated by it, that's like one of the things that like I really can't emphasize enough because it is real. That like you'll actually feel like so empowered to be, not only like to do things to like take care and provide for like your kid and stuff, but there's also like a sense, at least, and again, I can't speak for all fathers and all parents, but there's a sense for me that I want, my son to look at what I'm doing and be like proud. And he obviously doesn't have any idea of like what's going on. He's just like laying on his back and like doing this. But like I want him to be like, you know, able to recognize in hindsight when he's 20 plus years old. I saw my dad always working really really hard, and then also always trying to like manage being around me. And like I'm actively thinking about what he thinks of me. And I know like usually we're like don't do that, like because that's already like a
Hmm.
toxic thing that pre-meds and medical students and people in this field do, is like think about what everybody thinks about you. But in terms of like having a child, that's one of the driving things, and I think that's what ultimately is like the big motivating factor for me personally. Is like I want him to be like my dad was a baller, and like I have to like earn that.
Dude, I'm sure, and I think every man, it's cliche and kind of movie like, but I really do think that parents try their best to make the best impression on their own kids, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like one of those things where the kid's gonna be proud of you no matter what you do. I mean, there's an old post like just through my Instagram Explore page or something, where there was a dad and her daughter went through medical school, and the dad told her like, "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to tell your friends I'm like a cab driver, because all your friends in your class are, you know, doctors, lawyers, businessmen. I'm just a cab driver." And it turns into something very heartwarming. Something that goes viral on social media. But the idea is there that like no matter what you do, your kid's gonna be proud of you, no matter what, because to them you're their little superhero as long as you take care of them and are there for them whenever they need.
Yeah, yeah, and that's love. It's that back and forth, unconditional love, kind of thing that is special between children and parents for sure.
Dude, oh, I love it, man. I yeah, I hate to keep harping on it. This is why I know I want to do pediatrics because it's such a beautiful journey, both for the children and the parents as well. Just to see growth. And I know we've been reflecting a lot over the past little bit. I got like kind of three more questions before we wrap things up. First one, what has been the most challenging part of fatherhood as a medical student so far?
The hardest part is, so the first few months are hard. Every aspect of a child, like raising a child, has like the parts that are hard about it. The parts that are hard about the first few months is like the baby doesn't sleep more than 2 to 3 hours just because it has to continue to eat. And so like thinking of the baby not sleeping through the night, and it just kind of always, and the babies cry more early than they do later. And so sometimes I found myself like, okay, like I can't put my headphones on and try to study when I hear the baby crying upstairs, and like not go upstairs, not only like to like not help the baby, but like also to like help my wife Madison too. Like, so there's been challenges where I feel like I'm being stretched to do a lot in both directions of like, I'm studying for STEP, or I have like big things, and there's always going to be big things in medical school. And, we're all kind of like gun ho type A personality people, where it's like, I want to do as best I can in these big things. If it's a shelf exam, if it's step one, if it's whatever it is. And then there's this also another like really big thing going on. And so like I felt like I've been stretched in different places. And when I experience it in the present, I know that I'm going to experience it in the future. So to answer the question, that was a long-winded way of saying the fear of feeling stretched too thin and then making mistakes in one. Like I have a fear that I'm going to be stretched too thin and keep my headphones on, when I'm downstairs and not go to help. Or I'm gonna be at the hospital doing, a lot, and then come home and my son is now in middle school or something and says like, you're never around, dad, or something like that. And so that's an act of fear that I have after experiencing like how you can feel like you're being pulled into different directions. So for me, the hardest thing isn't necessarily something in the present. It's more so like in my head, feeling like I'm going to make a mistake or fail in the realm of my kid.
Getcha. Let's flip it on a more positive note.
There we
What
go.
has been the most rewarding part of fatherhood as a medical student?
The most rewarding part has been, um, well, first, like me and my wife's like relationship. Like, I mean, she's my best friend. Like, she always has been, always will be, and like that's been great. But it's also been special being able to kind of go through this process, like, and our relationship grow, and like our relationship take it to the next level of like, now it's not just us, but we like get to actually raise a human being together. And like again, I'm a huge like family person, and Like my wife is like, everything to me. And so being able to have this experience with her is particularly special. I know I'm going to have so many amazing experiences that are going to feel super rewarding, that are more directly related to like my son. But at this point, something that's really stuck out to me is just like, you know, I love my wife and like I love doing this with you, that kind of thing. Like this is like you're dope,
Oh,
and also
dude, that's
especially because like
awesome.
she's a baller. I know. See, I told you I'm emotional, bro. Like I'm just,
Oh, dude,
but like,
I am too. Don't worry, man.
so
Oh,
that's been special for sure.
dude, that's awesome. And I think like this leads me to the last question before we wrap up, and I can't wait for the answer to this. What lesson has Kari taught you that you did not expect to be taught?
Ooh. Oh, okay. This is odd. This is an amazing question. You're good. You're good, Andy.
I've been doing this for a bit.
So I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So, Kari had jaundice when he was coming out, so he actually had to be put under the lights and everything. And as the parent, especially like as a new parent, when he's getting like poked, because they have to like take tons of like blood draws to like check his bilirubin levels, and like it was like a lot of pokes, and like in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're pulling him away, and like they're stabbing my kid, and like, and bringing him all over the lights and stuff, and he wasn't like he seemed unbothered. And granted, he had a lot of bilirubin, so he may have just been slumped out. But I, I think that, you know, also he's good. He's like completely healthy and everything. But I think that what I learned from him in that case is that our minds tell us a lot about what we should be experiencing, and we let our minds experience of things override like the actual experience of things. And I would tell a patient, if I had to like do a blood draw or something, like just a tiny poke, it shouldn't hurt too bad. And like if the patient is like has a huge fear of needles and like goes crazy, in my mind I'm like, it's literally whatever. But like when my baby, I was like, no, this is like the biggest thing in the world, and my baby was like, dad, chill out, like it's literally whatever. Like they're gonna take care of this, just let it take care of itself. And so there's just like this innocence of this child doesn't have the experiences in his mind to tell him how he should feel about what's going on right now. And I think like it taught me that I have all these experiences that are telling me what should happen right now, instead of just allowing what is happening to happen and then allowing that to like tell me how to feel. And so it's been good for me to be able to take a step back and say, I'm not going to bring in my preconceived beliefs or notions on this experience, and I'm going to experience it for what it is before I let my brain tell me how I should experience it. And children, like, that's all they can do because they don't have those experiences. And so being able to see how he responds to things, it's like that thing where like if a toddler falls, like they don't cry unless like you make eye contact with them and tell them that it's time for them to cry. Like they're just saying like my body is okay, like, but should I be crying right now? And like they look at you in the eyes, and if you give them the like, oh no, you're hurt kind of look, then now their brain is telling them that they're hurt, and it's this kind of cycle. But as a baby, like they don't have that, so they really are experiencing everything for the first time, and the way that they do that is sweet. And it really teaches you that like, just experience things for what they are, and don't try to tell yourself how you should experience things. And as I'm going into clerkships and in these different kind of rotations, and I'm coming into peds is actually my first one as like quote unquote like ortho bro, right? Like it's like I could come into that of just like, yeah, like just send me the kid with the broken radius, like I'll do that one, whatever. And it just, instead of
Mhm.
like, because with the mindset of like, because peds has nothing to do with or whatever the case that some may think, their preconceived notions of it based on their whatever experience that they may have had or think that they've had. I'm encouraged to kind of go into these clerkships of just like, I'm going to experience this like new. I'm going to experience this for what it is. I'm going to be a pediatrician for these next 6 weeks, and experience it like how Kari would experience something new.
Dude, I was expecting a deep answer to that question, but I didn't expect it to get that deep.
Dude, you had a fire question. I had to do my best to try to answer it. Oh, at least halfway appropriate.
That was amazing. And all right. Well, before I get too emotional, too reflective with that, um, gotta wrap it up. One last question, man. This has been an absolutely incredible conversation. There's, of course, a lot of pre-meds and medical students watching both of our channels. So, what is the one advice that you would give to a prospective medical student watching or listening right now?
I would say that your story doesn't have to be the same as anybody else's. As you're going through pre-med, it's already kind of borderline toxic because you're in this hyper competitive atmosphere. So put your blinders on, and do what is fulfilling to you. You know, the experiences that you want to do that. The grades that you get, try your best. Those grades will be your best, and those are enough. Um, and then when you get to, medical school and beyond, and you feel like you can't have a certain life because maybe you haven't even either seen it done, or if you have seen it done, it didn't end the way that you would want for your own. That doesn't mean that that's going to be your life, and that if you haven't seen it done, that doesn't mean that it can't be your life. Most people don't have kids and stuff in med school, and you can have people tell you jokes about how you shouldn't have kids if you're going into a specialty or whatever the case may be. But follow, like, as cheesy as it is, follow truly like who you are, what your interests are. If it hasn't been done, be that person to make it to do it, because somebody else will need to see it. Somebody else will need to experience it. And if that starts with you, let it start with you. But definitely don't feel like just because your life may seem different than somebody else's that, there's any wrong in that.
Excellent advice and a fitting end to this episode. Really, this was an incredibly special conversation, JR. I can't thank you enough for your time, man.
Thank you, man. This is like, I'm honored to be able to. I'm talking to NDMD right now,
Oh,
and
stop.
like no, I seriously am honored, dude. And this was an awesome conversation. You're an awesome dude, and what you're doing is really really powerful for a lot of people. So I'm just happy that I could be a part of it.
Dude, I hope so. My main goal is just to share good stories and hope someone's inspired along the way. And I'm sure there will be plenty inspired by your story. Many people probably in the same shoes as you right now. So, of course, all of JR socials will be linked down the description, show notes. Go follow him on the name Evolving Medic. And truly, JR, just God bless you, Madison and Kari. And dude, stay strong once rotation starts.
Thanks so much, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Beyond the Scope podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's guests, and to make sure that you don't miss a single episode, make sure that you follow Beyond the Scope on all streaming platforms, as well as if you want to see the full video cut, subscribe to my YouTube channel, NDMD. As always, subscribe, like, follow, comment, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in the next one.